Dziękuję bardzo i za to wystąpienie ponieważ podaje to bardzo głęboki wymiar historyczny do zrozumienia, jak i ile to może kosztować później. And I'm going to switch into English for my presentation, and you can see it now on the screen about resilience in time of turbulence, which we are living in now. And well, I wanted to say thank you to the previous speaker. This is mostly about ending on the moment, what is our hope to be built on, and how to build this internal resilience, and where to take those powers which are keeping us alive sometimes. I'll run you first through quite a few numbers and facts just to understand in which reality we are finding ourselves now, and maybe to challenge your imagination how far you could or couldn't imagine that. Here we go. That the latest data from October 2025 indicates that for now it's roughly 19% of Ukraine's total area is under occupation. Just for your understanding, earlier in late 2013, there was 7% after Crimea annexation, Donetsk region and part of Lugansk region. In April 2022, after a full-scale invasion, those were roughly 27%. So 8% got back to the Ukraine governmental control after a couple of counter-offensive operations, but it's still about 90%. You can see the map with Lugansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhia, Kherson, full Crimea, and the active front line is more than 1,000 kilometers through and population currently living under the occupation is almost 3.5 million people. I've been speaking on a conference on integration 2 days ago in Estonia, and I was like, just for imagination, this is like 3 Estonians' population. This is how many people we have under temporary occupation. This is a bit of unpacking based on region and specific examples. The Donetsk region, Luhansk is nearly the whole region, Kherson region, Russia controls about 64, Zaporizhia region around 66, but also the nuclear station, which is the key thing to remember. Kharkiv region is about 5%, but then under constant daily shellings. And for example, most of the Ukrainian publishing industry is there in Kharkiv, and it's impossible to move to the other region. So basically all our publishing textbooks, school books, are still produced there under daily shellings. Sumy less than 1%, but then it's still very moving area on a daily basis. And how does it impact how the situation looks like? That mostly about forced Russification, suppression of language and culture, and integration into Russian administrative structures. And somehow I don't like the terms which is used to describe this region like temporary occupied territories, because it speaks about territories. So I'm mostly tending to say temporary occupied population, just to remember about people under the occupational regime. The most frequent crimes include, you can just quickly run through the slide, indiscriminate attacks, deliberate targeting of civilians, including shelling into homes and including targeting in the cultural sphere, arbitrary detention, that's enforced disappearances, which are not rare cases, torture of civilians. We have documentation of all those war crimes on a high level, forced passportization. Then now, for now, that's not your deliberate choice anymore. You are being forced because otherwise you will not have any medical support. You can't do nothing. You can't even now have your book a cab, because you need to have a state-led application, which is called MAX, and which you only can register with a number, re-registered number, and to re-register a mobile number, you need to provide your Russian passport. There's no other way around. A lot of sexual and gender-based violence and forced deportations, including, I guess you are aware of the cases of kidnapping people, suppression of Ukrainian culture and identity, looting, prosperity, fabricated trials, targeted killings, and even you've seen the big news from the couple of weeks ago when Angelina Jolie visited her son, and I think the main message was that people in the big West were taken seriously, like, what is a human safari? Can it be happening in a real life? And that's nothing new, because in Balkans, back in a couple of decades ago, those things were happening as well. And here, what I am questioning myself, even working in human rights for a couple of decades, is it even possible to have any justice? Does it even work to document all those crimes? What's next? Ukrainian situation and war of Russia against Ukraine is the most documented war in the whole world in history. Sometimes we have it live. What's happened next? Basically nothing. Do we take it seriously? We had the first question, if you guys have your, how you call this? Emergency bags, right? No, none of you. There was a situation in October 2022 when on the meeting of ICOM, International Commission of Museums, we had a big conversation with the other colleagues from a museum sector, asking each other, and they were basically asking us how to deal with the situation on the level of museums as well. And the question which one of the Western museum curator asked me, she asked me, can you please explain, just in a very human basics, what is your problem with occupation? Like, you could just change the flags and pay taxes to different country and everything would be fine. You would not have such a massive human losses. And I got numb inside. That was probably one of the first moments in my professional life when I had no answer. And then I stood back, and years in cultural diplomacy, and thought, okay, she's Italian. She probably has no experience in their history of occupation with the element of genocide. Or maybe on the other side, probably. And then I decided that it has to be somehow told story. Otherwise, we have a huge risk for those stories to stay never told. Yes, so it appeared to be quite a big exhibition with 12 different sections, documenting but also showcasing how people were dealing with the situation. Very diverse, starting from history of NVR through storytelling, humor, memes. You know, Ukraine is just there. This is our coping mechanism. I already have the whole folder with the memes about the possible nuclear development. And I bet that when everything happens, like, we start joking first, and this is how we calm ourselves down, and this is where we gather in this internal power to deal with the things. And then artistic response, you can walk with those goggles through the destroyed museums of some region and just see how Ruski Mir looks like in a museum aspect, and the labyrinth experience, which was quite interesting because that was a result of cooperation with one of the artist, which is now under occupation in Crimea, and he was running by himself the campaign, postering, like posters with just pretend nothing happening, just pretend there is no war, pretend you live in a free country, pretend this is not your mother. And on very different levels. So we built with him the labyrinth where you're coming through and imagining how your perception, how your cognitive functions as well are changing under the oppression of the occupation. And here one of the project, I'll just click through a few slides. So this is a very beautiful thing with the stones. Those are stones from Crimea beaches, and the artists, they got an open call asking people to bring their stones they were bringing from their summer holidays. And at the very beginning, we gathered 16 kilos of stones. Now we have 6, 10 kilos gone. People are still taking them, but sometimes they exchange them. And this very meditative place in the exhibition, which always getting people to think about the loss on very different levels. Those few clicks, this is a wounded culture. This is where you can see how the museums under Museum KRYZYS Center project also dealing with the with the occupation regimes. This is a bit of this labyrinth about deal with it, just pretend. But the thing is, it tells about 2 nonviolent resistant movements. I don't know if you ever heard, probably yes, about this one, not about the next one's Yellow Ribbon. They got the Sakharov Prize a few years ago for their human rights actions. They act under occupation and they gather, it's very difficult to tell how many people, but about, they run in about 200 small and bigger campaigns on a monthly basis. They're very diverse. They supporting the army forces with some information, but also they burning the occupiers' symbols, they disseminating the newspapers of real news, and they known by drawing this yellow ribbon symbol, which is very easy to draw and run away. And another one is Olya Mukha, which for me was quite a big insight to learn about their very existence. They were organized in Melitopol in autumn 2023, and it's all-female resistance movement, which is run by, that's their legend, 3 girls, very different age, and what they found out that the women, especially middle-aged, they are a blind spot for occupiers. They can't believe that they can be a force. So I think that what those ladies doing, it's amazing thing in terms of changing narrative from women in a war being just a victim, but being a threat. Just being someone who can push back, being someone who can run campaigns, who can help, and whom Russian militaries mostly do not recognize. Because they passing by with their groceries, they walk in their kids, but they can take pictures, they can gather some information, they can you can see their posters which they disseminate in, like, occupier, are you sure how the evening gonna end up? Like, do you know how the date will end? And by this, even if it's sometimes going on a level of urban legend that someone been poisoned or something, it creates a protection shield for other women as well, for them not to be treated as a victim which has no even right or opportunity to push back. And what they're doing, it's one of their projects, which is basically this week was celebrating 2 years. Since November 2023, they are publishing those diaries from the occupation. So they've already been published over 200 stories with the different testimonies. Mostly it's about the war crimes, but also quite often it's about their ways, their coping mechanism, and how they are building this internal resilience, how they are coping in. So I have 5 minutes just to run you through those Olya Mukha's diaries from the occupation with some narratives or some very topics, very top line, with how does it feel
This is just a landscape, right? Emotional landscape. Reality denial, which we all have a tendency to. High social pressure, back to Soviet practices, which all of us, most of us, my generation and older, do remember quite good. Informational control. This messenger is not the only thing, but all the internet providers are obliged to report on any unusual activities, even on your home internet. Rewriting history narratives. We are here mostly not already military and security, but also museum workers. I bet you've seen what they done to KRYZYS. There was antique site, which was totally ruined, and built very kitschy and horrible palace, which they now build their Ruski Mir narrative coming from. So rewriting history on such a level that it sounds for any a bit educated person as surrealistic, but still, it does work at some point. Aggressive propaganda, of course, broken family and vulnerable groups left alone. This is one of the key things, because I'm hearing question like, why don't they leave? Do you know how many checkpoints you need to cross to get out of the occupied territory? Any versions? So here we have 5, you think? 6, 7, 16 is minimum. 16, it's a minimum. It's a minimum times you can be sent to the filter camp. You're going to be checked if you have any pro-Ukrainian tattoos. Your phone going to be checked each time. Anything what you tell can be used against you. And then imagine if you'll be visible activist, do you have a chance to get out? No. If you're older person, no. If you're a kid, no. If you have someone to take care of, sick relatives, right? Or even your very home that you were building your whole life. You have animals, right? You have gardens, you have everything what you've done in your life. But then if you stay and not accept Russian passport, no medical support, right? The first question when you get into the hospital or even pharmacy, show your passport. Obviously, it creates a huge, massive opportunity for a black market, but then it becomes very, very expensive. Then, targeting children. That was a very recent story claiming Ukrainian identity as a mental disorder. They took 6 kids, teenagers, to treat them because them claiming that they are Ukrainians, that been treated as a mental disorder. That's it. Forcing to support occupational army forces, separating, that's very often. Last 2 summers there were a situation then kids were kind of taken to the summer camps in Crimea and never got back home. Cultural suppression is probably one of the most that we can see, but there's some practices of resistance and resilience. I absolutely love the story about the girl which just changed Россия здесь навсегда. It's a forever for не всегда, not forever. Then they changed it overnight on some pre-elections posters. Keeping the Ukrainian passport even or if and or when pushed to get occupational one. That's a matter of time. You have no choice there. Keeping the old names, like not Ukrainian only, but Crimean Tatar. Being Crimean Tatar with your identity like freely exposed, it's also a crime. Donating for Ukrainian army forces, this is already a criminal offense. This is what you definitely go into prison for. Preserving ethnic minorities' history and culture. That was the first thing what they were doing in Sumy region and in Kherson. They burned all the Ukrainian books and children book in local libraries. Now, even in Crimea, that was a bit softer over the years since 2014. Now, all the local culture workers are obliged to erase any sites of Crimean Tatar identity there. All books should be destroyed. Sometimes listening to Ukrainian radio and alternative news sources. News sources, that's a big thing. When we are talking and gathering some testimonies from people who survived, which were in captivity, they say that this is the most challenging things. Because on a daily basis, you've been told that there's no Ukraine anymore. The Lviv is in Poland now, that there's Russian tanks in Odessa, and Kyiv is Russian city, as it always has been. Even singing Ukrainian songs, we had the story from Kherson region when the girl been arrested for listening to Verka Serduchka, which is for me even difficult to recognize as a Ukrainian songs. Preserving Ukrainian symbolic tattoos, taking care of your graves, this is the thing. They do not allow you to take care for graves, or sometimes even to run a proper funeral for people which been killed. Very basic, celebrating Christmas with the whole world on 25th, not the 7th. That can be recognized as an act of rebellion as well. Those are already quite proactive actions, what they're doing. Joining the dictation of national unity from, that was a month ago, there was this big, that's for whole Ukraine. And what I found really beautiful this year, that they invited, and this is a big question of, I know that in Poland it sounds very harsh, like Ukrainian nationalism, Ukrainian national idea, right? Because Ukrainian national idea, it's rather, I think in Polish that should be more translated as a patriotic idea, because it's not about radical nationalism, it's embracing all the nations. Ukrainian national idea embraces Jewish people and Jewish culture, which has been home for Jews for ages, right, as well as for Poland. For example, Lviv Book Forum. Each year we have a Ukrainian Jewish Literary Award and special program. Before the national dictation, there were Gagauzes of Ukraine, all the minorities, and I know that it's also a question about those minority languages in Poland recently. You had a bit of a scandal on that. Embracing it, because this is based on your choice and political identity, not on your ethnicity. We are too big to think that way. Cooking traditional dishes, providing alternative education for kids, that's very important. And disseminating those posters and self-printed real news, even disseminating like just what is happening, because the level of propaganda messages is sometimes insane. And initiating campaigns on TOT. Last year there was a beautiful campaign that Olya Mukha was running. They brought to kids Ukrainian sweets. I have no idea how they smuggle it, but to the occupier military bases, they brought those black trash bags, telling them that this is where you guys belong, this is how you got home. And keeping a high level of security, of course. For example, both Olya Mukha and Yellow Ribbon, what they do, they are disseminating paid VPN and teaching people how to get through all those walls. But the main thing is probably, and this is what refers to the previous speaker, it's definitely owning the narrative, nurturing your own agency and togetherness. This is what makes them keep together. We were really amazed to learn that over those years, there's some activists from Olya Mukha appeared in Donetsk. Those are young girls, we basically grow up under occupation, but they still have this internal source and internal power to join and to get what the occupation regime doesn't have, but any democratic country gives a choice where you decide what you want to be. Thank you.